Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and how to use Type Null. Guys, I've been wanting to make a Type Null guide since I found out Serebii was a thing, because you look at the lore and this fascinating created Pokemon of god-slaying potential is going to have an evolution, so that means Eviolite is always a possibility. And let's go and look a bit more in Type Null to see how much of a possibility it really is. So normal type Pokemon, very standard, fairly boring, that we are going to be hit super effective by fighting, and ghost type Pokemon cannot hit us, so very standard stuff. Also, offensively, we're going to be immune by ghost as well, and we don't do much against steel or rock type Pokemon. But now it's on the stats. Type Null's stats are where things get absolutely beautiful. Like, I got a tear in my eye when I first saw Type Null's stats, because it has 95s and everything, but then 59 in speed, and then Serebii has a 95 in speed, so it's like, it's the RC's Pokemon, but Type Null is restricted by its helmet, so the speed gets cut, but it's still effectively the same thing. And then you look at 95s and you think, holy crap, those are a lot of stats to Eviolite. This Pokemon is going to be absolutely wonderful. And then we still have the 95 on the attack and special attack. So a 95 attacking Pokemon does good amounts of damage. Like, it's so weird that when you look at Serebii and you see the 95 in speed, it is immediately like, oh, this Pokemon doesn't really do too good. But then when you look at a slow, tanky Pokemon that actually has a 95 on the attack that's going to be able to get 50% more defenses, suddenly the tables turn quite a bit. And now we're going to go to Serebii and check out this Pokemon's moveset. Also, I did want to talk about the ability Battle Armor. So while not like the greatest thing Type Null could have gotten, when you start looking at the damage calculations, I guess it works a little bit better than adaptability, and it might not be like the most optimized thing ever, but opponent's moves cannot crit. That means you're just not going to have to worry about any kind of crazy crit strat. You know, there's like Focus Energy or even maybe like a Toxapex that goes for the Merciless ability or something. But with this, you're just taking the same amount of damage every time within like the whatever range that the damage calculation has. So for a tanky, high bulk Eviolite Pokemon, this is kind of one of the better case scenarios. So it's not a completely useless ability, it's just going to help out overall. But as for the moveset, we don't get a lot. Like, it's not like Arceus where we have extreme speed or we have some kind of craziness. Like, extreme speed on such a tanky Pokemon would work out really well, that we set up like a Swords Dance or two and then we destroy everything under priority. Also, we don't have the special coverage of Serebii. No Ice Beam, no Flamethrower. We don't have none of that. That really, it's just normal Rock Slide, X Scissor, Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw. That's kind of it. Yeah, like even we look at the usable Z moves, that's a good way of getting an idea of how much coverage the Pokemon has. It's not that fantastic. I guess the Iron Head probably one of the better moves in the end, but that's kind of all that we're really dealing with right now. And there's no really cheesy stuff that Type Null can't even breed, so no crazy egg moves, no sustain. It just sits there and it does okay damage with okay coverage. Let's go and hop into Pokemon Showdown because it's all about the bulk. Here we have Type Null with Eviolite. I want to compare it to Dusclops. I want to see what the difference was between like the bulkiest Eviolite Pokemon. I guess there could be a chance or a case made for Chansey or something like that, but overall just like balanced tank. Dusclops is just disgustingly tanky, even though it only has 40 on the hit points, has high on those defenses. I want to see what that compared to with the 95s and everything. So let's just go over to a damage calculator, and I'm going to have to do some screen flipping here and there. But when we look at this, okay, Energy Ball is going to do 24.2% of our health off an Abomasnow, and then the Ice Shard, let's go and like amp that up to Wood Hammer or something. That way we have both physical and defensive representation. So Wood Hammer is then going to do 23.7% on our Type Null. I'm just doing like the maximum tankiness right here. Neutral Nature, 2v2, 128, 128, and then we go into the Dusclops. That's actually going to be 27.3%, and then we go and bring up the Wood Hammer. The damage is going to get a little more interesting at the 25%. So it looks like we're taking about 10% less damage, maybe slightly less than that, 8 to 9%. That's actually an extra bit of tankiness that's going to be coming out of the Type Null. I also wanted to bring like super effective hits just in case they made some funny things happen, but Shadow Claw, same 5 base power, super effective against the Dusclops in comparison to the Brick Break, which is going to be 20.7%. So not quite on that 10% because the numbers start getting really small and crazy like that. But overall, is tanky, and I think that that's the takeaway. You just go, is tanky. So now going back to the movesets on Type Null. Return, Swords Dance, Shadow Claw, Iron Head. Pretty about as standard as it gets, honestly. Then when you're trying to break down it, okay, max out hit points, max out attack, get tanky, do damage. That return does a lot of damage. Like, that's going to two-shot a lot of Pokemon. After Swords Dance, that's one-shotting a lot of Pokemon as well. Shadow Claw, super effective against Ghost, so that's big damage. And then Iron Head, because Iron Head, like, Fairy-type Pokemon. I was also thinking maybe the Toxic. You know, Toxic's a pretty cool idea. That if you, Toxic is legal, it's just that I have like the wrong Showdown thing, so every move comes up as banned. So either way, like Toxic, what I like is that if you're going up against a bulky Pokemon, like you set up your Swords Dance, they bring in something filthy, you can just Toxic it and then switch it out and hope for the best. So against tanky Pokemon that don't want to be toxic, that aren't steel or poison type Pokemon, you just hit them with the toxic, you switch out into a tank of your own, and then that damage is kind of going to last, and then you save type Null for a little better time. Next up, I was just going for the Dusclops callback. You know, max out hit points, go full defenses, and get absolutely disgusting. And this is how the Dusclops runs. You go for the Confused Ray, so they have a chance of hitting themselves. You go double team, so they have a chance of missing. You Will-O-Wisp to reduce their physical attacks, so that way you'd want more of a special attacking, like maybe even Sassy or Careful or Calm nature, so that way you get a lot of extra tankiness, and then you rest. So the thing is, type Null is tankier than this Dusclops, which means you're a 3-4 hit KO Pokemon. So if you set up 2 double teams, rest, and then any of that time where your opponent misses a hit or doesn't have enough to 3-hit KO you, then you wake up and you could either go for extra things, and if they miss more than once, you get free stuff. So you get a lot of resting and stupid tankiness right here, or you can turn it around to damage. Return, still a lot of damage. That's 3-hit KO potential. Toxic, so you Toxic them, you rest, they can't kill you, you rest, they can't kill you, and then they go down to Toxic while you're setting up double team. So this is just stupid, fun, cheese, annoyance set on the type Null. I think it could work out pretty well. And it's more just a callback to how the Dusclops plays with the Eviolite. And type Null only has to worry about fighting. Dusclops has a little more weaknesses than that. So, you know, type Null is going to be very, very consistent. And then here's the overthinking, overcomplicated set. Flame Charge, Swords Dance, Shadow Claw, Return. So the idea is effectively the same thing as this set, except we're getting rid of our Toxic or Iron coverage or whatever we're doing right here. We're getting rid of that, and then we're also losing a slight bit of tankiness to go for the maximum speed efficiency. So 130 base speed Pokemon will be outsped after you go for 2 Flame Charges, and it's kind of looking for like weird angles that, okay, maybe a slower tanky Pokemon, you already outspeed them, so you can set up a Swords Dance, and then if you're not taking any damage, you go for a Flame Charge, you Shadow Claw, you Return, and you're still going to be finding really high amounts of damage on a lot of different Pokemon, or just in those weird, I'm a 4-hit KO Pokemon kind of scenario, or a low Pokemon. So say they have a sweeping Pokemon, 120-ish base speed, and they're already pretty low. Flame Charge, now you're outspeeding them, and then you can return to finish them off, and then if you have an opportunity for a free Swords Dance as they go for setup, now you're at like the epitome of sweeping. That the only things that could stop you are 130 base speed Pokemon that are faster, or Pokemon that are also going to be like priority and stuff. On that, the Shadow Claw and the Return are huge amounts of damage, and you're just neutrally one-shotting everything on the return. It's also very defensive Steel and Rock type Pokemon do count, but it takes a really weird amount of setup. Like, this is the 3 turns of setup into trying to sweep with just Return, but you're tanky enough to where it's actually a possibility, and then this is giving you the most tankiness while getting the most amount of speed. And I'm going to look later to see if we find those ranges where, what if we get rid of just a little bit of attack and then put the rest into the hit points? That way we can still stay tanky and try to get the most out of it. So let's go check out some damage calculations right now. I need to remember to change the screen back. And it's interesting. This is what I mean. Like, 90 base hit points, 252 invested, is going to be a 2-shot. So then that means we get the Swords Dance up. It's a 1-hit KO with high chance. And then the Garchomp, still a lot of damage. So unfortunately, the Garchomp will not be 1-hit KO'd. So it's like, it slightly just ever so not there. But just there's a lot of damage here. And then the Garchomp, we completely ignore the Garchomp's damage for quite a bit, and say if we had like defensive investment, or you can also just make type Null like full special defense, full defense tank to deal with specific threats, like we get very tanky and we don't have to worry about a lot. Like look at this Dragon Claw from a Garchomp. Not even 4-hit KO. Minuscule chance to 4-hit KO on that, and then if we had the Bold Nature. So, say we're running the Evasion set, we get to set up like 3 double teams as Garchomp, rest, and then still not matter. So, a lot of just standard offensive Pokemon. Weavile's probably going to get a bit more damage off of us because it has a low kick, and also Life Orb is an option. Sometimes Garchomp doesn't run Life Orb, so just identify the threats. Life Orb Pokemon, still a 3-hit KO on a super effective low kick from the Weavile. Knockoff is a big threat, so maybe Dark-type Pokemon or knockoff Pokemon aren't the best example. But look at this. Icicle Crash, 85, stab, base, attack, craziness. Icicle Crash is like the big go-to hit on the Weavile. So like strong neutral options from a lot of Pokemon just don't really put in the work. Even with the Life Orb, like they'll go and burn down to Life Orb while you're setting up. So this is where you just Swords Dance and then Return, and that's some overkill right there because these frail ranges, Oricorio, for example, you know, like you just nuke everything once you get that set up. So, did I just say, like, Sword? Yeah, Swords Dance, like, you can survive 2 hits. So, take a hit, Swords Dance, take a hit, kill them with Return. It's possible on the type Null. So, there's a lot of really weirdness. Also, I noticed I did have the 128, but even on 0, it's still going to be possible against the Weavile. So, it kind of shows you can play the tankiness for cheese sets, or you can also just play to doing damage and still being a very tanky tank of tank. There we go, guys. So really, I don't know what else there is to show about the type Null. It's going to be very specific that if you get against the right matchups and then they just don't get to hurt you, then you sit up and win. So type Null, better than Silvally, I would say. Silvally gets the faster, like, Flame Charge into setup, but it still lacks a little bit of damage, has slightly less tankiness, well, actually quite a bit less tankiness because of the Eviolite difference. So coverage made up. But if you just return everything and Shadow Claw everything, it's still looking good for the type Null. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day. Type Null's still a pretty fascinating Pokemon. And there we go. Thank you very much for watching.